At the company party my rich dad humiliated me. She's just a coffee shop worker. Everyone laughed. Then his secretary came to me. Ma'am, we need your bank's approval for the emergency loans. My dad's face went pale. He will regret it. I know someone once said, no one gets abandoned by their own family, but that's a lie. I once stood shivering in pouring rain, the door locked from the inside, while my mother quietly pulled the curtain shut, like I was some stranger. I once walked over 5 miles under the 95-degree sun, my shoes worn thin and my feet bleeding, just because I missed the bus. And I was only 12 when they called that character building. If you think I grew up in a family, I'm sorry. It felt more like a cold training camp. I'm Alice. And this is the story of how my parents, Jason and Linda, taught me that love isn't for everyone under the same roof. When I was little, I thought all families were like that. That all parents stayed silent during dinner, only speaking to give orders or yell. That every mom set a timer when you cried, then said, you get 3 minutes to be weak. That if a child wanted to be heard, they had to hold their breath so long their face turned purple before anyone might notice. My dad was a former soldier. My mom used to be a teacher, but after I was born, she quit her job and poured all her energy into training me to become someone who depends on no one. They called me their first experiment and always said that if I failed, I'd have no one to blame but myself. I still remember a winter night in Minnesota when I was just 9. I forgot to take the trash out on time. A small mistake. Or so I thought, but not my dad. He quietly opened the back door, dragged me outside by hand and said, stand here until you understand the value of responsibility. Then he closed the door. No coat, no shoes. It was around 34 degrees Fahrenheit. I trembled, my hands and feet numb, but the only thing I dared to do was stay silent. I stood there for nearly an hour, and when my mother finally opened the door, she just said, hopefully next time, you'll think twice before being useless. When I was 11, I overslept and missed the school bus. My mom refused to drive me, and my dad sneered, you made the mistake. You deal with it. So I walked from home to school, 6 miles. I carried a backpack weighing nearly 20 pounds. My feet blistered, my back soaked in sweat. When I finally got to class, nearly 2 hours late, the teacher called my mom. She simply replied, she needs to learn not to be dependent, and hung up. When I told my friends, they thought I was lying or being dramatic. Some even said, your parents are just strict. But it wasn't strict. It was cold. It was the way they trained me, like I was a survival machine. Emotionless, unloved. Every day at home was a silent war. I had to learn how to read moods from every frown on my mom's face, every raised eyebrow from my dad. Anything could be an excuse for a lesson. Forgetting to fold a blanket, spilling milk, laughing too loud, asking a question at the wrong time. I used to dream they'd one day hug me and say, we're sorry, Alice. You didn't deserve this. But that never happened. They never apologized. They just kept training me. And day after day, I stopped being a child. I became a training project, a doll with a calm face, even when screaming inside. I thought I was used to it all, but I was wrong. Because the final lesson they gave me when I was 15, it wasn't like anything before, and it changed my life, for I'll never forget that day. The Florida sun was burning like it wanted to melt the world, and the smell of hot plastic from the car seat is still etched in my memory like an unhealed scar. I was sitting in the back seat, headphones in, half dizzy from the heat, while Jason and Linda, my parents, argued about something completely meaningless. Like always, I didn't care. They only spoke when giving orders or criticizing. The rest was just background noise, loud and repetitive. The trip to visit my cousin in Tallahassee ended with a silent dinner and a snide remark from my mom. I don't know why she didn't pick up any grace from the other side of the family. I didn't respond. I was used to being the perpetual disappointment. The car stopped in a small town called Crestview near an old train station. Paint peeled off the rooftops, faded signs barely visible under the harsh sun. Jason turned around. His eyes, empty. Go get me a soda. I took off my headphones. Linda turned, her lips curled into a crooked smile. Your dad's thirsty. I want a bottle of water too. Hurry up, sweetheart. I looked at them, a twinge of doubt pricking at my chest, but still opened the door and stepped out. Heat blasted my face like an open oven. I walked across the cracked platform, pulled out the last $10 bill from my pocket, and fed it into a vending machine that groaned like it was dying. I grabbed the soda and water and turned back, and the car was gone. No cars parked nearby, just a wide sun-scorched lot. No vehicle, no people, no sound, except for the cicadas crying like grief. I stood frozen, the cold soda now useless in my hand. My heart pounded my brain, searching for any explanation. Maybe they just moved the car. Maybe they went to get gas. My phone buzzed a message. I opened it and only read 4 lines before my whole body went cold despite the blazing heat. Let's see how long it takes you to get home on your own. This is a test. Don't call Aunt Elaine. You need to learn how to face the world. Don't disappoint us. I froze. This wasn't a mistake. This wasn't a joke. They've really left me. No suitcase, no wallet, no map, no one beside me. I called back straight to voicemail. Called again? Nothing. Panic crawled up my throat like a tightening rope. I texted back, only to get one more line. Don't make a mess of things. Handle it yourself. I nearly threw up. I was only 16. No driver's license. No transportation. No plan. Rage began to rise beneath the layer of fear. I didn't cry. I didn't scream. I just stood there, crushing the water bottle in my hand until it crumpled. Then took a deep breath as if I could exhale the nightmare out of my chest. I checked my pockets. Some loose change? A phone with 27% battery? A crumpled paper map stuffed in the back of my backpack. Something I'd accidentally kept from last year's camping trip. I walked into the station where only one old man sat behind the counter looking half asleep. "Is there a bus station nearby?" I asked. My voice cracked with a lump in my throat. He raised an eyebrow and glanced out the window. "About 2 miles left down the main road. But nothing's coming through until tomorrow afternoon." I nodded and turned away. My feet stepped onto the burning pavement, knees aching like they might give out, but I didn't stop. I didn't let the tears fall. Didn't scream that I'd been left behind like some kind of stray. I did the one thing they forbade me to do. I called Aunt Elaine, the only one in the family who ever looked at me with real kindness. "Ellis, oh my God. What happened?" Her voice startled through the second ring. "They left me," I said, and for the first time in my life my voice truly shook. She was silent for exactly 3 seconds. Then she spoke clearly. "Stay right where you are. I'm coming." I sat down by the dusty roadside, staring out across the red dirt road. Back then, I didn't know my life had just taken a completely different path. And I would never go back. When Aunt Elaine arrived, I was curled up under the narrow shade of a utility pole. The hot wind sweeping across the pavement felt like a cruel reminder that I had nowhere left to go. Her old SUV tore into the lot like time itself was burning under the tires. She jumped out before I could say anything, wrapping me in the kind of hug that made it hard to breathe. "Oh my God, my poor girl." Her voice trembled, arms clinging to me like she was afraid to let go. "What the hell did they do to you?" I didn't answer. I had no words strong enough to describe what happened. But I knew one thing. I wasn't going back. Ever. 3 days later, I stood in the tiny living room of her house in Gainesville, staring at the only suitcase I had, the one she'd bought for me, because I had nothing but an old backpack. I didn't cry. I didn't panic, but it felt like a massive void had opened up in my chest, and I had to fill it with something, anything, just to keep from being swallowed whole. "What do you plan to do next?" she asked, sitting beside me with a steaming mug of peppermint tea. I looked out the window. The sky was overcast but no rain. Just like me. Gray but not breaking. "You know I'm not going back, right?" She nodded. "I'm not going to push you to do anything. But if you stay here, you'll have to start from scratch." "No, Jason. No, Linda. No more lesson plans. Just you." I nodded. For the first time, I felt like I had a choice. Not just being thrown into some script someone else wrote. Even if the road ahead was rough, at least it was mine. I got a job at a small cafe near the University of Florida, just waiting tables, but the owner was kind and didn't look at me like I was a broken kid. I worked from 5 a.m. to 2 p.m., then came home and studied for the GED at night. I wanted to reclaim the years of school I'd missed. I wanted to go to college, not to prove anything to Jason or Linda, but to prove to myself that I could. Aunt Elaine helped me in every way she could. She wasn't rich, but she was rich in love, something I had never really experienced before. She drove me to my exams, waited in the car all morning, bought me an SAT prep book even though it cost almost an entire week's worth of food for both of us. A year later I got accepted into the University of Central Florida with a partial scholarship. The day I received the acceptance letter, I stood frozen for almost 5 minutes. "You're about to have a new life, Alice," Aunt said, taking my hand. "And this time, you get to write it." 4 years later, I graduated with honors in urban development. When I walked up to receive my diploma, I didn't hear the applause. I only heard the voice in my head, the voice of a 16-year-old girl standing silently under the cracked roof of a train station, hands trembling from being abandoned. And I whispered to myself, "You did it, Alice. You survived." Right after graduation, I worked for a small real estate firm in Jacksonville. I started with the jobs no one wanted, cleaning model homes, checking building permits, cold calling, skeptical clients. But I learned fast. I watched everything. How people built trust and how they shattered it in a single meeting. 3 years later, I started my own thing. I took out a small loan from a local bank, combined it with the savings from years of side jobs and investments, and founded Alder Urban Living. A simple name, carrying no trace of the family I came from. I wanted a complete restart. The beginning was rough. At one point, I had only $93 left in my account and a project that got canceled at the last minute. But I held on. I learned how to negotiate, how to calculate risk, how to turn an abandoned lot into a modern housing block for young families. Little by little, Aldera stopped being a stranger's name. I hired employees. I rehired a lawyer who once rejected me in my first year. I bought back the old office building that my first company used to own, just to remind myself that nothing is permanent, not even the lowest starting point. At 29, Aldera hit 8-figure revenue. I stood on the 12th floor balcony of our office looking out over the Orlando skyline, and I smiled. I had once been left behind at a train station, unwanted. Now hundreds of people called me boss, and I never forgot that feeling of being discarded because it's the reason I never stopped moving forward. But I also knew the past never really dies. It only sleeps, waiting for a knock at the door. And on a summer day, that knock came. It was the past, and it came to collect me. 20 years after the day they left me like damaged goods, I stood in the glass-walled office of my downtown Orlando headquarters, 17th floor of the building bearing the name Aldera HQ, looking down at the busy streets below. Everything I had, every brick, every contract, every dream was built from a pain I never chose. But I survived. I lived well. And I thought the past had rotted away forever in the shadows behind me. Until my phone rang. A name I hadn't seen in 2 decades appeared on the screen. Vivian. I let it ring until it stopped. Then it rang again. And this time, I answered. Alice, my sister's voice trembled, like it had been dragged out from a dusty pile of old memories. I didn't say anything. Are you doing okay? I laughed. A dry, brittle sound. After 20 years? That's the opener you're going with? Vivian was silent for a second. Then she said without circling around, they're in trouble. Alice, debt. The house was foreclosed. Mom. She's depressed. Dad. She choked. Dad. Lost his entire retirement on some stupid bets. They need you. I clenched the phone, metal digging into my palm. My heart didn't soften. It boiled. I don't owe them anything, Vivian. But you don't have to forgive. Just help. Hell. I cut her off. Do you remember when I was 16? Remember the day they left me at that broken-down train station with a soda can and not a single explanation? Do you? They thought you'd come back. They didn't think at all. My voice was sharp as a blade. They never saw me as a person. I was a test. Something to train. And now that they've failed, they come back like I'm some charity bank? Vivian was silent. I heard a tired sigh through the line. I just want to keep the family together. Family. I almost laughed. Family ended for me the day they locked the door and left me standing in the January rain. I hung up. I thought that would be the end of it, but I underestimated them. Jason and Linda Holloway didn't understand failure, only how to flip the table. 3 days later, Jenny, my assistant, walked into my office, face pale. Alice, you need to see this. I took the iPad from her hands. The screen was already open to Facebook. A new post from an account named Linda Holloway. We are grieving parents. Our only daughter abandoned us when we needed her most. After everything we sacrificed, now we face illness, poverty, and loneliness. She's forgotten her blood. She chose money over family. Below were hundreds of shares. Thousands of comments. So sad. Today's kids are so selfish. How could someone abandon their elderly parents? I heard she's rich. So ungrateful. I felt sick. Not from the lies but from how smoothly they cast themselves as the victims. They knew how to perform. They always did. Some clients are asking questions, Jenny whispered. A few canceled appointments. I closed my eyes, my head pounding like a drill. They didn't just want money. They wanted to pull me back at any cost. I opened Instagram. My company's account was tagged in a series of posts with hashtags like bad daughter, filial piety, pay up Alice. I smirked. If they wanted to play this game, I wasn't backing down. I posted a black and white photo of the Crestview train station. The place they left me when I was 16. The caption was a single line. Not everyone who gives birth to you deserves to be called family. 2 minutes later, Vivian called. I didn't pick up. An hour later, Linda texted. You've disappointed us. You owe us, Alice. I stared at the words, blood boiling like molten steel. I typed back. No. The day you drove away from that parking lot, every debt was wiped clean. Then I hit block. The screen went quiet again. Only, I knew this was just the beginning. 3 days after I posted the train station photo on Instagram, the real battle began. Every morning I woke up to dozens of new notifications, posts, comments, direct messages. Some called me ungrateful, others labeled me a velvet-wrapped snake. Wealthy, successful, but heartless. There were even videos analyzing my cold-blooded behavior, based on carefully edited photos. Some TikTok influencer even made a fake clip claiming to be a former classmate, saying I once bragged, I'll abandon my parents if they stand in the way of my success. The media parasites began to swarm. I didn't care about strangers gossiping. But when my company's name started showing up in hashtags like boycott all deer and don't buy from the ungrateful, I knew it had crossed the line from personal to professional. Jenny walked into my office Monday morning, her face like she'd swallowed ice. She held a stack of printed emails in her hands. Alice, I'm sorry. Some of our partners are asking for clarification about your family situation. I clenched my fists. My family is a scar, not an investment portfolio item. Jenny placed the printouts on my desk, hesitating. 3 major clients have just delayed signing. One of them messaged me directly. We don't want to be associated with someone being called unfilial in the media. I let out a bitter laugh. So now it's a story about being unfilial. Fantastic. I stood up and walked to the window where Orlando stretched out like a moving painting. The buildings I helped design, the corners I once dreamed of transforming. Now it all felt like it could collapse under one well-crafted lie and a crowd eager to point fingers. That's when my phone rang. Caller, Dominic Hayes, one of Aldera's biggest investors. I answered. Dominic? Alice, I'll be blunt. What's happening online? It's not good for the company's image. I sighed. What? You want me to go live and cry because I didn't send money to the people who once left me at a train station? A pause. I'm not judging your personal life, but we're talking about customer trust. Is there any way to ease this? No. Then you need to be ready for consequences. I hung up. An hour later, a new post from Jason Holloway appeared. A photo of the two of them sitting in a dim, run-down room, eyes cast to the floor. We never meant to hurt her. Everything we taught her was to make her strong. And now, in our old age, she turns her back on us as if we never existed. Over 12,000 shares. A wave of fake sentiment came crashing in. If it were me, I couldn't live with that kind of guilt. How can someone be so rich yet so poor in heart? Parents aren't perfect, but no one deserves to be abandoned. I wanted to smash the screen, but instead I opened an old folder on my computer, photos of the train station that day, emails from the lawyer I'd contacted when I reported being abandoned, audio files of Aunt Elaine's testimony used for temporary guardianship paperwork. I'd kept everything, not out of hate, but because I knew they'd come back. And now they had. An emergency meeting was held that afternoon. I sat at the head of the table facing the PR team, 2 senior managers and our in-house attorney. No one spoke until Mike, our communications director, finally did. We advise against a public response. The more you engage, the more the media latches on. I shook my head. So you think I should let them keep lying while this company's reputation bleeds out? Mike looked at me, his round eyes behind glasses narrowing slightly. Alice, empathy isn't something you win with logic. The public is being driven by emotion. I leaned back, hands clasped together. Then I'll use the only thing I have. Truth, cold, detached, the same way they treated me. I pulled out a USB and plugged it into the laptop. On the screen appeared an audio clip from 2006, Linda's sharp voice. If she can't find her way back, then she doesn't deserve to be my daughter. The meeting room went dead silent. I'm going to make everything public. People deserve to know, but this time, not through their lens. I stood up. They want psychological warfare? Then let me show them what it really looks like. That night, I opened my personal laptop and wrote a post. When I was 16, my parents left me at a train station. Not because it was a mistake but because they wanted to see how I'd manage on my own. They didn't look for me for 20 years, but when I became successful, they came back. And when I said no, they created a heartbreaking tale about being abandoned. This is the first and only time I'll speak publicly. I'm not ungrateful. I'm just surviving. I hit post. Then I sat in the dark office, waiting for the second storm to hit. I was ready. Less than an hour after the post went up, my phone on the desk started lighting up non-stop like it was under attack. Notifications, messages, emails, missed calls. I sat still in the dark office, lit only by the glow of the laptop screen, like a spotlight aimed straight at someone who just stepped out from backstage. The post wasn't a slap, it was a dissection. Cold and precise. Every sentence cut straight through the fake narrative Jason and Linda had spent so long crafting. I attached screenshots of old messages, the one from the day they left me at the train station. Handle it yourself. This is a maturity lesson. I posted the audio recording of my mother scoffing while talking on the phone. Her voice clear. I don't need to raise her anymore. Let the world teach her. I included the scanned file of my temporary guardianship documents. When Aunt Elaine took me in while my biological parents ignored my calls in the middle of a stormy night, I didn't curse. I didn't beg. I didn't use clickbait words. I just laid out the truth, raw and unapologetic. And the public began to shift. The first comment that made me stop came from a woman named Michelle. I believed her parents' post. I'm a mother too. But after reading what she shared, I'm horrified. No one deserves to be treated like that. Then came others. I was left at a supermarket when I was 10 just because my mom was mad. I know that feeling. If you survive that kind of upbringing, you're the strongest person I've ever seen. You're not ungrateful. You're living proof of surviving emotional abuse. By noon the next day, my post had over 3 million views. News sites started picking it up. CEO claps back with brutal truth. The truth behind the ungrateful daughter story that broke the internet. The woman who exposed her toxic parents and got the whole community behind her. I walked into the office the next morning like someone returning from war. And I wasn't walking alone. The employees who once stayed silent out of caution, now greeted me with looks of quiet respect. Mike, the communications director, nodded slightly. I was wrong. Your response perfect timing. I looked around the meeting room. The same room where they had advised me to stay quiet, to endure, to wait for the storm to pass. They wanted to make me the villain in my own story, I said. Now they've lost control of the narrative. That night Jason and Linda responded with another video, but this time, it all unraveled fast. They sat in the living room, Jason pretending to sob while Linda repeated a line like she had memorized it. We just wanted our daughter to understand that we sacrificed so much. But the clip, barely 2 minutes long, was dissected frame by internet users. Inconsistent facial expressions. Fake tears. Newly installed living room lights, proving they weren't nearly as poor as they claimed. The comments were no longer sympathetic. They were furious, shameful, using their own child to fish for pity. Not every parent deserves forgiveness. I used to hate Alice. Now I just want to hug her. On Friday morning, Dominic Hayes called again. His tone was completely different. I want to apologize, Alice. I didn't believe you from the beginning. You don't need to apologize, I replied, cold as ice. But from now on, remember, silence is also choosing a side. I hung up. I sat back in my chair and closed my eyes. 15 years of building trust with the world, and a single lie almost burned it all down. But I held firm. And this time? No one could rewrite the truth. 3 days later, a reporter from The Atlantic sent me an interview request. The topic, the journey of an abandoned child and her public stand against emotional abuse in the family. I took a few seconds to think. Then I typed back, I'm ready. But this time, we tell the story the right way. No tears, no sugarcoating, just the truth. I hit send, and for the first time in years, I felt a weight lift off my shoulders. No more fear, no more inner conflict. I had reclaimed my voice. Less than an hour after my post went live, my phone on the desk lit up like it was under siege. Notifications, messages, emails, missed calls. I sat motionless in the dark office, lit only by the glow of the laptop screen, like a spotlight shining down on someone who had just stepped out from backstage. The post wasn't a slap, it was a cold dissection. Every sentence was a precise incision into the fake narrative Jason and Linda had so carefully constructed. I attached screenshots of old messages, the one from the day they left me at the station. Handle it yourself. This is a life lesson. I posted the audio recording of my mother sneering as she spoke on the phone with someone, her voice clear. I don't need to raise her anymore. Let life teach her. I included the scanned temporary guardianship papers from when Aunt Elaine took me in, while my biological parents refused to answer my calls during a stormy night. I didn't curse. I didn't beg. I didn't use sensational language. I just presented the truth, fair and unapologetic. And public opinion began to shift. The first comment that made me pause came from a woman named Michelle P. I believed her parents' posts. I'm a mother too, but after reading what you shared, I'm horrified. No one deserves to be treated that way. Then came more. I was left behind at a grocery store when I was 10 just because my mom was mad. I know how that feels. If you survived that kind of parenting, you're the strongest person I've ever seen. You're not ungrateful. You're living proof of surviving emotional abuse. By noon the next day, my post had over 3 million views. News outlets began picking it up. CEO fights back with powerful truth. The reality behind the ungrateful daughter viral story. The woman who exposed her toxic parents and gained a movement of support. I walked into the office the next morning like someone returning from battle. And I wasn't walking alone. The employees who once stayed silent out of fear now greeted me with respectful eyes. Mike, the communications director, gave me a small nod. I was wrong. The way you fought back, it was perfect timing. I looked around the conference room, the same place where just yesterday, they advised me to stay silent, be patient, and wait for the storm to pass. They once tried to make me the villain in my own story. I said, now they no longer control the narrative. That night, Jason and Linda responded with another video. But this time, it all unraveled quickly. They sat in the living room, Jason faking sobs while Linda repeated a line like she'd memorized it. We just wanted our daughter to understand how much we sacrificed. But the clip, barely 2 minutes long, was dissected by the internet, frame by frame. Consistent expressions, fake tears, newly installed living room lights, proving they weren't nearly as poor as they claimed. The comments weren't sympathetic anymore. They were angry, shameful, using your own child to beg for pity. Not all parents deserve forgiveness. I used to hate Alice. Now I want to hug her. Friday morning, Dominic Hayes called again. His voice was completely different. I want to apologize, Alice. I didn't believe you from the start. You don't need to apologize, I answered coldly. But from now on, remember, silence is also taking a side. I hung up. I sat back down and closed my eyes. 15 years of building trust with the world, and one lie, almost burned it all down. But I held my ground. And this time, no one could rewrite the truth. 3 days later, a journalist from The Atlantic sent me an interview request. Topic: the journey of an abandoned child and the public stand against emotional abuse in the family. I paused for a few seconds. Then I typed, I'm ready. But this time, we tell the story the right way. No tears, no sugarcoating, just the truth. I hit send, and for the first time in years, I felt something lift off my shoulders. No more fear. No more guilt. I had taken back my voice. I was reviewing the final design plans for the Riverstone residential project when Jenny pushed the door open, holding a thick cream-colored envelope, sealed with a stamp of an express courier. Alice, this came for you. Priority delivery. Nina's voice was tight as a string. I saw the sender's name clearly printed in the top left corner. Holloway and Brooks, attorneys at law. I already knew. I had been waiting. I opened the envelope with deliberate slowness, as if I could delay whatever was about to appear. The first page embossed my name, Alice Holloway, at the top, followed by a bold, cold, shameless heading. Official notice of lawsuit. Based on the Filial Responsibility Law Section 7, Clause 11 of the Pennsylvania Civil Code. I froze. I had never felt so disgusted by a legal document in my life. My parents were suing me. Suing me. The daughter they abandoned at a train station when I was 16. The person they hadn't contacted for 2 decades for failing to provide financial support in their old age. I exhaled slowly, the rage rising quietly in my chest like a fire smoldering beneath ash. Jenny, call David now. I need to see him within 30 minutes. David Rhodes, my lead attorney, sat across from me. The copy of the lawsuit spread out in front of him like a rotten joke. Legally speaking, Alice, Florida doesn't have a strict filial responsibility statute. But if they filed for temporary residence in Pennsylvania or push this at the federal level, it could be messy. I folded my arms, eyes fixed on the page. Messy. They're trying to use the law to chain me to people who threw me away like garbage. They don't want money. They want control. David nodded slowly. They think you'll be scared. Afraid of litigation. Afraid of the media. Afraid of the shame. And if you pay just once, they'll have their hands around your neck forever. I smirked. Then they picked the wrong person. That night, my phone rang. An unknown number, I answered. Linda's voice came through, sweet as syrup but laced with venom. Alice, I just want to have a calm conversation. If you agree to support us financially, we can avoid unnecessary trouble. I cut her off, every word sharp as a blade. No. Do you have any idea how much we're suffering? Her voice suddenly rose. "We're losing our home? Our insurance? Lost your dignity a long time ago," I growled. "And now you want to play the good parent?" Linda went silent for exactly 2 seconds. Then her tone shifted. "If you fight this lawsuit, we'll take everything to the press. You really want your image tied to a filial piety case, don't you?" I laughed. A cold piercing sound that made her go quiet on the other end. "Go public. Share it all. Let the world see how biological parents can abandon their child at a train station and come back 20 years later demanding money, like debt collectors." I hung up, and I didn't shake. Not even a little. The next morning, I summoned legal, communications, and investor relations teams. On the table was the detailed legal response I had prepared with David. Alice Holloway denies any financial obligation under the Filial Responsibility Statute due to complete absence of care or support from the parents over more than 2 decades. Etched evidence of abandonment, text messages, medical records documenting psychological trauma, and temporary guardianship by Aunt Elaine. I ended the meeting with one line. "They chose to fight with the law, then I'll show them what it looks like to fight with justice." That night, I posted my next statement attaching the lawsuit. "They left me when I was 16. No contact, no help, not a dime of support. Now they're suing me for money, for power, for reputation. I'm not writing this to complain. I'm writing this as a warning. Psychological wounds should never be legalized into obligation." The post spread like wildfire. Child advocacy groups abandoned child survivor networks. Everyone shared it. Lawyers, journalists, activists all stood behind me. A new hashtag emerged. In '01, trending nationwide. 3 days later, David messaged me. "Their lawyers are proposing a settlement. They're starting to feel public pressure." I replied with one line. "No compromise. Take it to court." Because this wasn't just a lawsuit. It was the first time I was seeking justice for that 16-year-old girl from years ago. Monday, 9 a.m. I was in a meeting with the new project team when Jenny knocked rapidly. She peeked in, pale-faced, voice trembling. "Alice, you need to come downstairs right now. Something's happening." I frowned. "What is it?" "They hear Jason and Linda. They're causing a scene in the lobby, and there are reporters." I stood up instantly, heart pounding, not from fear, but from rage rising like lava in my chest. I clenched my fists, nodded at Jenny. "Call security, but don't do anything until I get there." When the elevator doors opened, I could already hear their familiar fake sobbing, echoing through the main lobby of Aldera HQ. Linda, dressed in an overly flashy floral dress, was sitting on the floor, clutching a tissue to wipe away non-existent tears. Jason stood beside her, his face flushed red, pointing fingers at my staff, yelling nonstop. "We just want to talk to our daughter. Are we not allowed to see our own child? Is this America or a prison camp?" Around them, my employees were whispering, some were recording on their phones. A local CNN reporter was already there, camera poised. I walked forward, the sound of my heels echoing sharply across the marble floor, slicing through the chaos like a knife. Jason spotted me first. His eyes lit up, as if he'd just found the spark he needed to fuel his performance. "Alice finally decided to come face your own flesh and blood?" he growled, ignoring us. "Does that make you feel proud now?" I stopped in front of them standing tall, gaze cold as steel. I didn't answer immediately. I looked around at the faces watching, the cameras rolling, and even the people who once doubted me. Then I turned back, looking directly at the 2 people who used to call themselves my parents. "Oh, you're not my parents anymore. Not because I turned away, but because you chose that 20 years ago, when you left me like garbage next to a vending machine." Linda began to wail louder, clutching her chest. "What are you saying, Alice? We're blood. I gave birth to you. How can you be this cruel?" I didn't blink. Blood. Blood that made their daughter walk 6 miles under the summer sun because she missed the bus? Blood that locked her outside in a thunderstorm? Blood that spread lies and sent social media to attack her, just because she refused to give you money? Jason snapped. "You think money made you a person? You've forgotten who you are. Everything you have is because we raised you." I laughed, a sharp contemptuous sound that echoed through the lobby like a slap. "Raised me? You left me when I was 16. The one who raised me was Aunt Elaine and me, working 3 jobs, sleeping in smelly dorms, living on instant noodles. You didn't raise me, you starved me, body and soul." Linda sobbed harder, glancing quickly toward the camera as if waiting for a close-up. Then she shakily stood up, reaching out to touch my arm. "Sweetheart, I know sometimes we were too strict, but now we just need a chance, just a little help, then things will get better." I stepped back, my voice firm as stone. "I don't help people who abandon me. I don't fund those who exploit my past for pity, and I don't forgive lies." I turned to security. "Remove them from the building. If they come back, call the police." Jason lunged forward, shouting, "You'll regret this, Alice. We made you. You're my flesh and blood." I didn't turn, didn't flinch. I walked straight toward the elevator, my footsteps steady, like the heartbeat of someone who had just cut out the final tumor from their life. As the doors closed, I saw Linda struggling, yanking at the guard's arm, her tears still refusing to fall. Jason was still shouting something I no longer care to hear. The doors shut, all the noise behind me vanished, and for the first time, I felt like I had locked the past away for good. The lawsuit lasted nearly 4 months. 4 months of every document, every memory, every old wound being dragged into the light. But then justice spoke. Blunt, cold, and final. The court ruled, Alice Holloway has no financial obligation to Jason and Linda Holloway. No support, no responsibility, no legal ties whatsoever. I sat silently in the courtroom, hands clasped, no shaking, no tears. I just breathed one deep breath, like I had just swum to the surface. After 20 years of being drowned, the following week, headlines exploded across the media. Titles competed for drama. Parents sue daughter for refusing support, bitter defeat, manufactured victimhood, when parents fake it for sympathy. Alice Holloway, a symbol of survival from emotional abuse. Aldera's reputation rebounded quickly. Clients returned in waves. Investors called to apologize. Even charitable organizations invited me to speak at conferences on family boundaries and personal autonomy. And Jason and Linda? They lost their home, lost their image, lost the sympathy they once exploited with crocodile tears. I didn't celebrate. I didn't gloat. I just felt quiet. One Saturday morning while watering my balcony plants at my high-rise apartment in downtown Orlando, my phone rang. Once again a familiar name appeared. Vivian. I hesitated for a second. Then I picked up. Alice? I'm sorry. Her voice was hoarse, choked like someone who had cried too much. I stayed silent, letting her continue. They've really lost everything. The house was taken by the bank. Dad drinks all day now, slumped outside a cheap motel room. Mom just lies in bed, not saying a word. They have no one left. They still have you, I said calmly. Vivian's voice broke. But I don't have the strength. No money. No means. Alice, if you could just a little help. A small room? Some living expenses? I took a deep breath. Vivian, I don't hate you. I don't even hate them. But I can't do to myself what they once did to me. Abandon myself to save someone else. But they're still our parents, no matter what. No. I cut in for the first time, speaking with complete clarity. They were my parents, but they gave up that role long ago. I can't rescue a ship that steered itself into the rocks and then blame myself for not jumping into the sea. Vivian didn't respond. Only the sound of wind slipping through the phone, like a quiet sigh. I'm sorry, but I've chosen to keep my boundary, and I won't break it again. I hung up. My heart didn't feel light. It didn't feel heavy either. It just felt real. The next day, I drove out of the city down quiet country roads toward Gainesville, the only place I was ever called someone's girl. The place where I could sleep peacefully without fear of being woken in the middle of the night for a character lesson. I arrived at Anna Lane's house in the late afternoon. She was sitting under the porch, eyes half closed, a mug of herbal tea on the old wooden table. Alice. She opened her eyes and smiled, warm as sunlight. I walked up, knelt beside her, and hugged her thin arm. I'm home, Auntie. I knew you'd come back eventually. She gently stroked my hair because in the end, we all returned to where we were once loved. We sat there for a long time, not speaking. No need to. Only the breeze and the fading light, carrying away the dust of the past. That night, I took her out to her favorite Mexican restaurant. She ordered 2 margaritas, then raised her glass to freedom. And to my girl who learned how to choose herself without asking for permission, I clinked my glass with hers, a soft smile on my lips. For the first time in 20 years, I no longer carried the urge to prove anything to anyone. No longer the abandoned child. No longer the adult trying to save the ones who once hurt her. Just me, a free woman, living truthfully and owing nothing to anyone. My story isn't one of complaints. It's a reminder that sometimes, to live honestly, we must walk away from those labeled family. I've learned that blood doesn't guarantee love, and forgiveness doesn't mean allowing the pain to continue. Letting go isn't weakness. It's the choice to choose peace over repeating cruelty. No longer the abandoned girl. I'm a survivor, and now I live with full ownership of my life. What do you think about Alice's story? Should boundaries within family be upheld even if it comes at a cost? Share your thoughts below. And don't forget to follow the channel for more heartfelt stories about family and life.